Welcome to Trinity Radio, or welcome back to Trinity Radio. Yes, we have been on a break for a lot of December because we have been busy, but we are super happy to be back to close the year out and to get ready for the new year. Braxton, how you doing?
Doing fantastic. Do you know that if I had timed this right today, I could be running Trinity Radio with you while at the same time speaking at the Rethinking Hell conference. At the same time, folks. But that's because it's an online conference, and I sent them my video this morning.
Conference, yeah. Anyway, I'm Jonathan Pritchard. That's Braxton Hunter, and we are back on the live stream. Happy about it. Hope you're happy about it.
Slay Marin's happy about it, so much so that she jumped away from the Rethinking Hell conference. Shh, don't tell Chris.
Yeah.
Or Peter Grice.
Whatever. Chris is going to show up here.
He'll probably show up, yeah. Okay, so here we are, and we're going to look at we're going to take question and answer. By the way, if you have a question or a comment that you want said, put question in all caps or comment in all caps before you say it. And you can go ahead and do that even while we're talking about something else. I can favorite that comment and I'll bring it back up later, okay? So don't even worry about it. Anything you want to ask about, go for it. But while you're thinking on those things and trying to get things together, and I see people still coming in the door, find a seat. There's room in the back there. We're going to look at this article, and the Baptist coming in, sitting in the back. Yeah. Now, we're going to look at this article, but I didn't put it I'm not putting it on the screen. So if you want to see it too, I didn't put the link in the description. But you can Google these words, Pew Research, suffering, God. And the first thing that comes up probably will be the Pew Research Center article that was released on November 23rd, 2021. And it is titled, or at least it says, I guess it's the title, Few Americans Blame God or Say Faith Has Been Shaken Amid Pandemic and Other Tragedies. Most U.S. adults say bad things just happen and that people are often the reason. People are often the reason.
Yeah, sounds kind of like the free will defense, doesn't it?
It does. Sounds like people think about that on their own.
Right.
And so, Pritchett, do you want to read some of this, or would you like me to?
For centuries, philosophers and theologians have attempted to answer the vexing question: if there is a good and all-powerful God, then why is there so much suffering?
Well, in fact, let's not do it that way.
Okay.
Why don't we just hit the bullet points, because there are bullet points across these pages. And if you're looking,
my reading voice that terrible?
No, it's not that. It's just I don't need them to tell. They don't need it. We don't need them some sort, the Pew Research Forum, to tell our audience about the problem of evil and what it is. Okay.
Yeah, but you're always saying, sometimes we say things and we don't.
You're right. Go right ahead, Pritchett.
Yeah.
And after you set it up, we'll just hit bullet points later.
From the biblical book of Job to the 18th century satirist Voltaire, 20th century Christian writer C.S. Lewis, and the 1981 bestseller When Bad Things Happen to Good People, and Now I Can No Longer Read. There you go. Both great literature and popular culture repeatedly have tackled this, quote, problem of evil. If there's a good God out there, why does bad stuff happen? Shouldn't it just be nothing but good stuff?
I'm not laughing at that. I'm not laughing at the problem of evil. I'm laughing because Pritchett is seeing my screen, and I keep going away from what he's reading. Go ahead, Pritchett.
Anyway, that's the setup. If there's a God and he's so great, why did bad stuff happen? That's
that's it, huh?
Yeah, that's it.
All right, so
and that's the setup for the problem. And then their research says, people just kind of blame people for that. They don't really help.
Yeah, so here, let's hit the bullet points. When asked to explain suffering, majority of U.S. adults say that sometimes bad things just happen. Sometimes bad things just happen. 44% very well, 42% somewhat well. Okay, explain why suffering exists.
Yeah, that explains it very well.
Oh, I got you. Okay, yeah, okay.
So,
and then you have the range there.
86% of people's like, yeah.
We actually have another theodicy, at least, to provide an opportunity for people to come out stronger. Now, let's be clear. When we have many videos on the problem of evil, we're not going to rehash the whole thing here, but it is important to say that while our position, mine and Pritchett's, is, and this is not everyone's position, even at Trinity, but our position is not that God created a world and wanted the evil that's in it, but rather that God can redeem the evil and then use it for something good, some good purpose. So while I think there's truth in the kind of soul-making theodicy or just a character-building theodicy that experiencing suffering and pain actually builds our moral character and integrity, I think there's truth in that. I don't think that works alone without the engine of the free will defense as well. So I do have a super chat, and I will privilege super chats. So real quick before we go on, Punch Bowl Haircuts.
Hey.
Says, do you find arguments for infant baptism to be convincing?
No.
Do New Testament household baptisms provide a precedent?
We don't know. I mean, that's you can make arguments from silence either way, as far as like the pedo versus credo baptism debate. But I don't find the arguments to be convincing. I find them to be interesting, especially the way the Presbyterians will argue for it. I've found some of their arguments very interesting, but I haven't found them to be convincing. So I still affirm credo baptism. Tertullian didn't seem to be too impressed with it 1,800 years ago, and I'm not impressed with it. But I find it interesting. But
yeah, and I like what. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
And I was going to say, it's not something I care about. I mean, if that's your tradition and you want to baptize infants and you believe that you are convinced by it, agreeing with me is not the, that's not something I particularly care about. So it's just for me, it's like go dunk your babies if that makes or sprinkle them or whatever.
Well, actually, we should push the book that we were both asked to write or I think you were asked actually to write a review of that infant baptism book that was like 4 or 5 views, edited by Adam Harwood. Remember?
Oh yeah.
Yeah, so that's a great. I read the book, so that'd be a good.
Well, emphasis in the church. That's not the main subject of it.
Well, but it's covered in every chapter.
Yeah.
But I like Peter Fox here on this thing. The Bible doesn't speak of any infants being baptized.
Right. But that's not an argument either way, in my opinion.
Yeah.
There's a lot of things.
There could be things the Bible doesn't talk about that are true or good.
Right. And you just gotta look at. I think if you go to the first 3 centuries and look at what was going on, it's not clear cut and dry. I mean, like I said, the arguments for it are interesting, but they're just not convincing. But it's not something that I care about. I don't know that it's something. Even the Calvinists, the Reformed Baptists, and the Presbyterians, they can set aside that issue, even though the Presbyterians killed Baptists back in the day over it. They've set that aside so they can have their hooray for the gospel conferences and whatever. So it's
all right. Well, let's jump back to the article.
Even not divide over.
Thank you for the super chat, and that is a super interesting question. Now you've got a book recommendation. I really do recommend that book. I love 4 Views types book, but it's not the Zondervan's 4 Views book.
It's not a Counterpoints, but
I don't remember who.
Yeah, it's anything with Adam Harwood is going to be
Rockstar.
Yeah.
Okay, so we did that one. Let's see.
And
what's
happy
next.
anniversary. He recently had an anniversary, so happy anniversary to Dr.
Yes,
Adam
indeed.
Harwood.
Most Americans say the suffering in the world comes from people, not God. We already talked about that one. All U.S. adults, 80%. 80%. Am I reading this wrong? Most Americans say that suffering in the world comes from people, not God?
Right. 86% say that when you take both of those questions, that it's very well or somewhat well, take that as a whole. Yeah, the blame God for evil is not a thing. But that's not really what...
Well, it is a thing. I mean, there's 20% out there.
Right, but that's not really the thing about the problem of evil argument, because the problem of evil... why does it seem likely that there's a God given the fact that there's evil? So whether you blame people for evil or not blame people for evil doesn't really have any sort of purchase on the
if
the
our argument, if
yeah.
the argument is successful, then it demonstrates its point successfully. If our responses to it are correct, it doesn't matter if everyone in the world thought that God was evil. If our responses are right, our responses are right?
But we got to caveat that, because what is go back up to the title of this. What is they don't blame God or say their faith has been shaken. So, as a counterpoint to what I just said, as a caveat to what I said, even though blaming God or not blaming God says nothing about the purchase of the problem of evil, it's still the case that it is not all that persuasive to 80% plus people that if their faith is not shaken, they're like, because most people still believe in God whether they're Christian or not, right? I mean, sorry, atheists, you're just outnumbered. So the argument that if evil is so prevalent in our culture, doesn't that seem probabilistically that no God exists? That's not going to be very persuasive to people who believe in God. Their faith hasn't really been affected by tragedies and the pandemic or whatever, and so they're going to say, hey, yeah, that's not a problem.
Yeah.
So the problem of evil is, even whether it's the logical problem of evil that's now dead or it's the probabilistic problem of evil, its purchase is going down. Now, interestingly enough, in Eastern part of the world, it's never been a thing. And probably in a lot of underdeveloped nations, even, like in South America, whatever else. The problem of evil really doesn't have purchase outside of people who live comfortable lives relative to the rest of the world. And that's just always been the case. So
it's an interesting, it's ironic, right?
Yeah. So, I mean, the second that Greek philosophers are now living, they have the barbarians doing all the chores for them, and they're sitting around yakking all day.
Well, and it's also true that philosophy,
like Luke says, now that they have comfort, they sit around and they think about this stuff, and they think that it's a bigger issue than, like, apparently most people are like.
Well, that's because there has to be a certain amount of societal stability and workforce in order to get an upper crust or people that we want to do this particular job of sitting around thinking.
Yeah.
And science and philosophy and all that sort of thing flourishes in environments where you have that.
Yeah.
But someone asked real quick, how many were in this study? Data in this report is drawn from the panel wave conducted from September 20th to September 26th of this year. A total of 6,485 panelists responded out of 7,252 who were sampled for a response rate.
That's a good sample
89%.
size.
Yeah, well, of course,
fantastic
yeah,
sample size.
That's big.
Very good.
So, all right, let's go back.
So the point is, people who bring up the problem of evil as some sort of smackdown against God, whether it's the logical, which doesn't go anywhere, or even the probabilistic, that's just your comfort privilege speaking. That's what that smacks of.
Comfort privilege.
Your
comfort privilege.
I mean, that just shows when you bring that argument that you are a couch potato and don't live in the real world.
Okay, and I don't know if we saw this, but what do Americans think when they hear about human suffering? 71% are thankful for the good things in their own lives.
Yeah,
and 62%
response is
thankfulness, presumably for many of them to God, right?
Yeah.
And then 62%, also substantial, sadness for those who are suffering.
Yeah.
And then 40% desire to help those who are suffering. So here's the thing. When U.S. adults, this is all adults, it's not just believers, this is U.S. adults, when they hear about suffering, then they immediately feel thankful, which is an appropriate response, we would say, for the fact that for the goods that they do have, the things they do experience. And then they feel sad for people going through it and try to help.
Yeah.
In a cascading level of majority. But still, it's So that's interesting. All right. Actually, we need to do something about that number. 40%. Only 40% desire to help those who are suffering.
Well,
That's a
only
problem.
33% of Americans are actively attending church.
Yeah, so that's
That was
them right there.
before
That's
the pandemic.
this is the
Yeah.
our. We're all in that 40%.
There's a book on this. Who really cares? It's been out for years. Who really cares?
I know you've talked about it.
Poor Christian people living in Mississippi, care more than rich liberals.
Now, by the way, before we go on
It's
to the
just
next,
how it works.
before we go on to the next data, one thing that I think that people should know or think about is that, and I said this for the Rethinking Hell conference thing, is that if we find that in our culture right now, where the desire is for judgment to be brought against Ghislaine Maxwell and Jesse Smollett, and we heard people on both sides of the Kyle Rittenhouse thing, and everybody is crying out for justice and all of that, and they're not blaming God for it in general. 80% are blaming people for it,
or the system.
Well, then it sounds like a solution for what they should want. Those 80% is a just and mighty king who will bring judgment and function justly.
Yeah, because if it goes unpunished in this, this go around, it will not go unpunished.
Yeah, it's going to be.
Yeah.
Now, this is interesting. Nearly 3/4 of all U.S. adults, 73%, say they believe in heaven.
Yep.
While a smaller share, but still a majority, 62% believe in hell. Of all U.S. Yeah, of all U.S. adults, 62%.
Yeah, but there's been past research from Pew and what's the other one? And the name's escaping me right now. But there's been past research that there are atheists who believe in heaven. Or some kind of afterlife. So I mean, a lot of people believe in heaven.
Yeah. Well, and it wouldn't. I heard someone try to defend a naturalistic afterlife where you end up connecting with multiple. Lives
was one I was thinking of.
Yeah, multiple like if the multiverse is real and it's really an infinite multiverse, and if these are at least two big ifs, and if you could like jump to the other you and the other one of the other multiverses,
of course you can. Spider-Man's did.
Then you can continue to do that for all eternity. The problem is you'll end up, and I can't remember who was saying this. I was listening to it just yesterday, someone on YouTube, but it made sense. Is like if that were to happen, then in some version of yourself at some point, and I don't know why you always happen to keep jumping to yourself, but in some version, you're going to be a paraplegic, and you won't be really happy in that version.
That reminds me of that.
So the naturalist version is horrifying.
Yeah, that's like the show Sliders, where they would go through parallel. Yeah, but it was always on Earth, and
But it still surprises me that 62% believe in hell.
Even more surprising is that 69% of mainline Protestant denominations still believe in hell.
Yeah.
They need to be more afraid of it.
Yeah, they don't act like it, do they?
Yeah.
Both figures are similar to what the center found when it last asked these questions in 2017, you said. Protestants who belong to the evangelical and historically black Protestant traditions are more likely than mainline Protestants and Catholics to express belief in hell. Meanwhile, roughly 1/4 of U.S. adults say they believe in neither heaven nor hell, including 7% who believe in some other kind of afterlife, and 17% who do not believe in any afterlife at all. So now they do break down different types of afterlives, I think, but it makes me wonder: are we talking here specifically about Christianity, or are we talking about any religion that would offer a binary hellish or heavenly?
Yeah, I mean,
afterlife?
I think predominantly Christian. Is what because they don't really go into other faiths here in the data, because after they get past all U.S., then it's Protestant traditions and then Catholic.
Yeah.
So I mean, if you're Eastern Orthodox, they didn't even give you an other box in this Pew poll. Interestingly enough, the Christian Post also talked about how a lot of New Year's resolutions among young Americans is to reignite their relationship with God even through the pandemic.
Amen.
Yeah.
Do you know how many churches? Surely there have been churches that have fallen apart, but do you know how many churches pastors are telling me that they're flourishing now because they're starting to get their COVID numbers, pre-COVID numbers back. But then on top of that, they are flourishing online now like they weren't before. So it actually had kind of a slingshot effect and turned out to be helpful in the end. All right. Not that the COVID is a good thing, but that goes back to the whole thing of God being able to redeem bad things for good.
Yeah, of the people, 35% between ages 18 and 34, and 35% of people between the ages of 35 and 49. That would be our age bracket. Um, yeah, they are more likely to make faith the subject of their New Year's
Amen.
resolutions than those who are older, like 50 to 64 and 65 and older at 25% and 17%. Interestingly enough, black Americans are more likely than white Americans to make God and their spirituality the center of their New Year's resolutions.
Praise the Lord.
It says, yeah, white people you guys need to be more religious.
Be like them.
Yeah. Just be more black. Come on, what's wrong with white
most
people?
Catholics, but not most Protestants, say some non-Christian religions can lead to eternal life in heaven. Most Catholics, but not most Protestants. Are you seeing this, Pritchett?
Yeah.
Most Catholics, but not most Protestants, say some non-Christian religions can lead to eternal life in heaven.
Yeah, and Catholics are the ones who are trying to sell that inclusivism. You know, their own Pope is trying to sell that inclusivism more than Protestants are trying to fight against it, and yet Catholics ain't buying their own Pope, and Protestants aren't buying their own preachers either. It's just nobody's listening to their leadership on that question. Here's an interesting thing. The COVID-19 pandemic may have forced or encouraged more people to make changes outside of the annual reminder a new year brings. But a New Year's resolution is still something most Americans have made at some point in their lives. Making a New Year's resolution doesn't reveal who or what a person is relying on to make that change in their life, nor successful such resolutions are. But higher numbers seen among younger adults, those who attended at least some college, and church-going Christians indicate they have a higher motivation to make such changes, at least in the form of New Year's resolution. Even people going to college, those awful bastions of indoctrination towards leftist views and atheism. Even people going to college are like, yeah, this we need to rethink. Which is interesting because you know what this is coinciding with? It is coinciding with a drastic decline because that 33% of Americans who attend at least twice a month or more religious services, that was pre-pandemic. Since the pandemic, it's gone down. The church attendance is down everywhere, and I think people are now rethinking. Given everything, if you take everything that's gone on, not just the pandemic and other tragedies and fires, and there was just recently a fire in some suburbs in Colorado, and you've got that happening out west all summer, and then
since that what?
Crime has increased and all. Given everything that's going on in the United States of America, I am not surprised more Americans are like, yeah, we need to get something.
We need to talk to God.
Yeah, we need to talk to God about this.
We need to get right with God. It's like what we saw after September 11th. That Sunday, actually, I wasn't pastoring yet, but I was a youth pastor, and I got to preach at the church that I was there that Sunday. I mean, where I was a youth pastor at, and I preached that Sunday because my pastor was off somewhere else. And I preached, and man, the place was like Easter times 10. And we saw that. We saw people falling on their face before God in numbers.
Yeah.
After September 11th. Now, a couple months later, things start to fall back the way they were.
But it's interesting. The problem of evil. So many times atheists will say that that's really the one, like Bart Ehrman, for example, or agnostics or whatever. That's really their biggest thing, right? Mm-hmm. But the reality of evil actually, for more people, draws them closer to God.
Thank you, Finding Truth. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Now, he's at a new channel now with
Explain International?
Yeah, Explain International with Stephen Boyce and somebody else. That's a good place to go.
That's right.
So you good. Thanks. Fine. That's Santi. We love Santi. And Santi just got to host IP's end of the year Q&A. So that was cool. All right. So let's get back to the data here. Views on human suffering. All right. Most U.S. adults have given at least some thought to life's big questions lately. Well, that's good to hear.
61%. That's the majority.
Hearing about terrible things
most.
Happening to other people. We talked about that. Thankful. Bad things just happen. Americans see personal, societal reasons for suffering. Similar shares of Americans express agreement with the following two statements. Suffering is mostly a consequence of people's own actions, and suffering is mostly a result of the way society is structured. About 7 in 10 people surveyed say each statement explains their view at least somewhat well.
Yeah.
Now, as we always say, we don't want you to come away with the notion that if something bad is happening to you, it's necessarily because you did something wrong to bring this on yourself. So if you get cancer or something like that, it doesn't necessarily mean you did.
Like human beings did something, or just the way the system works in society is causing a lot of problems. Like our incompetent president and Congress right now, for example. Can't seem to get anything done, fixed.
Yeah, most believers say they rarely or never get angry with God or allow so much suffering in the world. I think it's mostly preachers who get angry with God because they're the ones who are talking about it the most. They're like, it's okay to be angry with God, and I know it's normal to be angry with
People
God.
Like, it's like my
and
wife.
Everybody in the seats are like, why are you so angry at God?
Yeah, I say that kind of stuff, and my wife's like, I'm not going to get mad at him. You have fun with that. I'm not.
It's never been my thing. I can't say it's never happened.
To be like David in some of those songs.
Right, yeah, it's happened
Wake
before
up,
to
God,
me.
where are you at?
But still the thing is, it's like,
it's like I'm scared of the lightning bolts.
Yeah, what's the point of getting mad at God? Yeah. Whatever reason you think you have that you're justified in being angry, He's God. If you're a Christian, you recognize that. Yeah. If you're an atheist, of course, you think, I have no reason to believe that God. Okay, but for Christians, we believe that He's right and we're wrong. So what's the point? Yeah. What's the point? Being angry with Him. Yeah. I like that Punch Bowl is deciding to start trying to get other people to give us super chats. I'll say what IP said the other day is we are trying to raise money for this upcoming year, continue to do stuff like this. But thank you, Punch Bowl. I appreciate that. He says, what would you say to a Christian who says they aren't going to be baptized because they were baptized as an infant?
Nothing.
So I do. I will.
Yeah.
Tell them to believe Jesus and do what He says.
There you go.
Pritchett will let you be okay about that.
I'll just be like,
yeah, but the thing
I'm
about
not going to have an argument with somebody who thinks that their initial baptism. I don't care to have that fight.
No, they're not trying to fight with you. What if they say that to you? I'm not going to get baptized because
okay.
You don't want to give them the reason why you think they should get baptized this time?
I'll give an answer when asked.
Okay. So what would you, well, let me answer it because this is a pastoral question I've answered a million times. So the thing is, the first thing Jesus asks us to do after we become a Christian, get saved, is to get baptized. And I think that means that you should do that first thing after you get saved. I don't think, the biblical example is quickly after you get saved. Yeah. But the fact is,
the modern thing is, let's wait until everyone can show up to take pictures and we can coordinate. I mean, even our church does that. I'm not gonna lie, our church is like, we'll do.
Yeah, that's how my daughter. Yeah,
once a quarter or whatever. Yeah.
I was baptized on the same day I got saved. Just so you know.
I've been baptized.
And I've also been. Yeah, I mean, I've been baptized.
I've been baptized for joining a Southern Baptist church coming from.
You're supposed to get baptized. Now, I don't believe in that. I just believe if you really weren't a Christian when you got baptized before, if you realized later on that, no, I really did surrender to Christ. I really did repent.
Yeah, if you have the conviction to do it, but when they say they're not going to do it, they don't have that conviction.
Well,
they have different convictions.
I don't care what their convictions are. If they just got saved, they need to get baptized.
Yeah.
Again, even if they got baptized as a kid or whatever else. That's my believer's baptism rant.
I'm just going to like whatever. I'm not going to argue with them.
Yeah.
But I'm glad that you will.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know that there's a disagreement in here except that I'm right and you're wrong and you need to repent and believe Jesus.
I agree with your position.
Dang it, Pritchett.
What I don't agree with is to say they're having a fight with some Presbyterian or Methodist.
Well, obviously, Punch Bowl Haircut wants to.
Yeah.
So I'm going to tell him what
Braxton's
to say.
your man on that.
Mariah Lynn
whatever.
says, I don't know. I get mad at God all the time, but I'm overly dramatic.
Nick Quint's here.
I'm talking about Mariah Lynn right now.
Okay.
Talking about Mariah Lynn. What do you have against Mariah Lynn?
I don't have any. I have more against the way you frame questions like that.
When did you stop beating your wife?
Anybody on planet Earth.
Have you stopped beating your wife? Yeah. Well, she makes a good point. There are people, and I like I say, I can't say it's never happened to me. I've had it happen. I think it does. I mean, I think it's natural to expect that might happen at some point. Not that we should be excited about getting mad at God.
Okay, I get mad all the time, but I'm overly. I'm not. I can relate to that a little bit because when I get mad at God, I get mouthy. I don't know if it's probably dramatic because I'm getting, but it's usually in the car by myself where no one can hear it, and then I feel stupid for yelling to myself. I mean, I don't ever feel stupid for.
You can call me and yell. I don't care.
It's just I feel stupid when I talk to God that way. I don't feel stupid when I talk to nobody that way or talk to myself that way. And I'm a person who talks to myself about any number of subjects frequently. Yeah. But that always makes me feel weird after, because there's something about what you say. It's kind of stupid to get mad at God. But I'm human and I do stupid things like yell at God on occasion. Nick Quint, New Testament theologist. Go subscribe to his channel. He's got a wonderful series. picking apart James White's The Potter's Freedom book, and he's doing a phenomenal job in that series. So you guys want to check that out and watch his videos on doing homilies, even though he didn't upload one.
And PMA Master, thank you for that 300
Yes.
knock donation. I'm not sure what that is, but it sounds wonderful. Thank you. Anything helps. And it says, Happy New Year's. Jacob wrestled with God. I don't think God despises an honest struggle with difficult things about him and the lives we live. Let's see, what's he saying?
A bit of fist shaking every now and then.
Yeah.
Oh, gosh.
So yeah, that's and here's the thing. The only thing I think that could maybe enlighten or impact the illustration just given from the Bible is that Jacob. It's interesting to look at, and we do this in the Genesis series that I have. I do this in the Genesis series that I have, and I look at when exactly did Jacob appropriate the God of his fathers as his own God. That is a interesting thing. So before he's actually sort of appropriated God as the God of his fathers and refers to as my God, might impact whether you think he was. It's interesting. It's the Old Testament, where we could consider him a part of the people of God. The people of God language.
Yeah.
People of God refers to God's people.
I'm distracted from Nick calling me hot. Me a hot old
anyway,
man.
PMA Master, thank you for your donation.
Yes.
Thanks for the shout out, hot old man.
Yes.
Oh, he's talking about me. He's talking about me.
I was the one who was shouting.
No, I've shouted him out in the past, and that's what he's referring to.
Oh, okay.
All right.
I'm glad that you acknowledge that you are finally old now. 41.
Thank you for that. Thank you for
41.
that Norwegian money there. I appreciate that.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Let's get back to this study. We're almost done kind of looking through what it says, but I think we're going to get some gold nuggets here. Let's see. Few U.S. believers say the suffering in the world has shaken their faith in God. Most do not see suffering as a punishment
look at those numbers,
from God.
like 3% and 10%. Explains that very well, but 76 people are like, yeah, that doesn't like God. Yeah, that doesn't explain.
Not 76 people, 76%.
Yeah, 76% of people are like, yeah, no, that doesn't really. That's not what's going on here.
3%
are like, yeah, that's the atheist YouTubers that made it into the poll.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, that's who answered that.
Most do not see suffering as a punishment from God. We saw that. Okay. U.S. adults say suffering comes primarily from the actions of people, not God. We've already said that.
No.
Most Americans say human beings have free will against God's plan. Now, this is controversial, right? Most Americans say, this is the percentage of U.S. adults who say each of the following comes closer to their views, even if neither is exactly right. So 18% of all U.S. adults say God or a higher power directly influences everything that occurs in the world. But see, I could say influence.
Yeah.
The question is, well, obviously we're talking about here is whether we have determinism. This is really about determinism or libertarian freedom, because we're talking about, do you have libertarian freedom to do things that God doesn't want done? Mm-hmm. Right? Now, no Christian should believe that anything we do threatens God's plan, capital P, like the ultimate overarching plan of redemption and all that.
But 71% are saying human beings are free to act in ways that go against the plans of God or a higher power.
Yep. And 9% don't believe in a higher power or God. Yeah. All right. At least that's what it said right there. More Americans believe in heaven than in hell. We saw that already. They're just recapitulating the data now. 1 in 6 Americans do not believe in any afterlife. Among those who believe in an afterlife other than heaven or hell, what do they believe? All right, here we go. NET, spirit/energy lives on. Spirit energy continues to live on. 14%. Consciousness continues, 2%. Another dimension of reality, 6%. Consciousness continues. Maybe that has to be that's only 2%. That's like the 2% of panpsychists that were in the philosopher's study.
Another dimension of reality.
Maybe that's
is
the
6% of the 21% who said the energy.
Yeah. Oh, these are elements of that.
Yes.
Okay. But the consciousness continues. That's made up of your panpsychists there, because they have to believe it continues as energy or something. All right. That's not interesting to read those things anymore. 2/3 of U.S. adults believe deceased people are reunited with loved ones in heaven. 2/3.
I believe that. The loved ones that make it.
Yeah.
You know,
half of U.S. adults think people in hell are cut off from a relationship with God. Half of U.S. adults. Now, what was it that believed in hell? 60-something%?
Yeah, 62%.
And we've got here, this half believe people are cut off from a relationship with God. Half of U.S. adults think people in hell are cut off. Okay, so of the people that think there's a hell, there's a smaller set that think.
Yeah.
About 4 in 10 U.S. adults say people who do not believe in God can go to heaven. About 4 in 10. Somebody preach the gospel to those people.
What I tell you?
What?
4 in 10 U.S. adults say people who do not believe in God can go to heaven.
You're going to do your atheist speech, or you're going to do your atheist
speech? The inclusivism that the Catholic Pope is trying to sell. They've been trying to sell some version of it since Vatican II. Catholics aren't having it. Evangelicals listen to evangelical preachers say inclusivism is wrong. And the majority of Protestants are like, yeah, I mean, they don't have to believe in God. They'll still get in. That's just weird. Like, the Catholics are not listening to their current dogma, and Protestants aren't listening to their current dogma. But the Catholics agree more with the Protestant preachers in their own leadership. It's just, and Protestants, you're all listening to the Pope, and you're like, yeah, I'm with him on that. Go.
Somebody preach the gospel to those 4 in 10 U.S. adults who say people who do not believe in God can go to heaven, because unfortunately that's not the truth.
Be like the Catholics who aren't having it from their from that stuff.
Yeah. Many Christians say some non-Christian religions can lead to eternal life in heaven. How's that not the same? Younger Americans more likely than other adults to believe in reincarnation
or fate. Now,
Capturing Christianity just had an interesting debate on reincarnation. And the data there is interesting, but I encourage people who like near-death experiences and find similarity between near-death experiences and stuff like that and the data for reincarnation type things to listen to that video that was on Capturing Christianity, because the guy who was debating against reincarnation did a fantastic job. And but the other guy, I think Arjun is his name, and he did a really good job, I think, presenting the best you can on that. So it's an interesting debate. All right. Large majority of Americans believe that things happen that can't be explained by science or natural causes. Now, that is interesting. You hear that? Large majority of Americans believe things happen that can't be explained by science or natural causes.
Yeah, I believe that too.
Yeah. Well, I mean, of course we believe that.
I'm one of them.
It's not surprising, and it shouldn't be surprising. Thing about it is, but hey, let's see. What atheists? I have atheists here. 11, 13, 34. The course of their life is predetermined or fated. Okay, we would expect atheists who are consistent.
Yeah, but 34% of atheists think that things can't be explained by science or natural causes.
Yeah.
34% of the atheists.
Yeah, third.
This is why the YouTube atheism does not represent anybody, right?
It represents people who sympathize with them.
No, I guarantee you most of their listeners buy about a third of what they're saying. Same thing with a third of our listeners. I mean, most of our listeners only agree with us some of the time. They don't agree with everything.
We've said enough out there now that even people that like me that want to ask me to come do things will be like, I agree with like 98% of what you say. And I'm like, oh, so you're Calvinist is basically probably what it is.
Right, yeah. Or younger creationist.
Oh, it could be that, yeah.
Yeah. So, but I'm just saying, like, the metaphysical naturalism they're trying to peddle, and the whole nothing can be explained except by scientific. Yeah, they're not buying that.
Most Americans believe prayers can be answered. 67% definite answer to specific prayer requests is possible to experience. 67%, and 46% say they have experienced it.
Yeah, and 81% of that 67% are Christians.
Hey, by the way, I do want to throw this up here because it is a super chat. Jed Phillips, who's one of our students at Trinity, and you ought to be one of our students at Trinity. Amen, Pritchett. By the way, if you want to become a student at Trinity College of the Bible and Theological Seminary, you can. Maybe you don't want to be a professional minister. You just want to serve the church better, or you just want to learn some stuff in a formalized way. You can do that with professors like Chris Tate, Leighton Flowers. We're not done, by the way. I'm just doing a mid-show commercial here. Chris Tate, Tim Stratton, Steve Gregg, Chris Featherstone. Man, there's just so many. Leighton Flowers. You want to come here. And you need to check it out at TrinitySem, TrinitySem.edu. And there's a thing on the right hand of the page. You can fill that out. But Jed Phillips did that. And Jed Phillips, thank you for that super chat. He says, Happy New Year. I'm looking for a good book on the hypostatic union, Pritchett. Did Jesus have a pre-fall human nature? Thanks.
I don't actually have a book recommendation on that, to be honest with you.
I think it's funny that in every show
Cyril
you
of
do,
Alexandria,
you always do, but now you're like
Athanasius or Cyril of Alexandria, but I don't know like a good Christology
well, you just look
book.
so dejected and ashamed. That
yeah,
you
I don't know of a contemporary work on that I think is like, this is the,
yeah.
You can just read in any chapter.
I'm so glad he asked this
Christology.
question.
Yeah,
I'm so glad.
Theology. Well, I don't sit around and do Christology.
No, I love it because it's just, you're looking at me with that. You looked at me with that look that my dog gives when he does something wrong.
This is the one book recommendation I don't have. Go read,
I don't have one either.
Go read.
I have a master's in theology, and I'm not giving him a book recommendation.
Yeah. Go read Thomas Oden's Classic Christianity section on Christology. I mean, that's, I've just, in the systematics I've read, but I haven't just read a Christology book that goes deep in like a contemporary one. So you can read
sorry,
Cyril,
Jed Phillips, but is Adam Harwood, to bring him back up again, is his book out yet?
Not yet.
He has a systematic theology coming out that will I'm sure address that.
Now, as far as did Jesus have a pre-fall nature, I don't.
Yeah.
I mean,
he had a sinless nature.
Yeah, but what does that mean?
And Adam and Eve, wouldn't you say they had a sinless nature before they sinned?
Before they sinned, yes.
So in that sense,
but nature, what you probably think of the word nature different than I do. When I think of nature, I think of custom and habit, not like some sort of ontological
goo, sin goo that gets all over you.
So I don't think of it in terms like that, because fusus in the Greek that Paul almost not every time, but almost always refers to nature, meaning custom or habit.
DJ Roel, you can go to school here if you live in Alaska, because we are a 100% online distance learning school. So you can go to class in your pajamas. Sorry, go ahead, Pritchett.
Pre-fall, I mean, he was made in every way like his brother, except without sin. But I don't want to turn that into except without a sinful nature, because that's not what the author of Hebrews says. So I don't know about the ontology stuff about that. But I mean, simple answer, whatever Adam was like, that's what Jesus was like. But what we think of nature and an environment inclined towards sin, I mean, it's born into the same environment. I don't know what we mean to say that. See, people will say, well, sin has infected every aspect of human nature to give us a sinful nature. And I'm just like, okay, but what does that mean? I understand what it says that we have a death nature, okay? I understand what the East is talking about on that, right? We inherit death. And because of the death, like Paul says in Romans 5, we all sin because we have a death nature. But Jesus was able to die too. So I don't know if I'm with the West on this and shaking it out that way. That's what I'm saying. I'm certainly not with the West on how they interpret Romans 5, 12 through 21. I mean, that's trash. So, but when we get into ontological questions about the nature of our material and immaterial self, I'm still thinking on that stuff.
See, Denise says, I agree with just about everything, Braxton, except that complementarianism thing. You'll figure that out soon, I'm sure. Hey, I'm completely open on that. I am completely open. And I've changed positions on a number of things, and I could change on that if it's demonstrated to my satisfaction.
But see, the thing is that's like one of those things that, like what I said about the baptism, you want to stick with your baby dunk. Okay, you're like, you couldn't possibly care less about that issue.
Right.
I mean, you have your belief, but are you going to go debate it and argue for it?
No.
And like, I'm not going to go argue about. You argue with me about it all the time, but that's just because we're just sitting around the office trying to irritate each other. But as far as like seriously, no.
Most believe some interaction is possible between the living and the dead. About 7 in 10 Americans say it is possible to feel the presence of someone who has died, while roughly half say that living people can be helped by those who have passed, 51%, or communicate with them in some way, 47%.
Yeah, like people who pray to the saints or whatever, like in the Catholic
Yeah,
tradition,
immediately all Catholics would have to say they can at least they can
with
communicate
somebody who has
outward.
passed. Yeah,
Yeah.
and of course, there's a growing number of Christians that don't have a problem with the idea of ghosts, right? And that you can still communicate with this. So it's weird.
And it's not to say that it's. I mean, look, the fact is, there's a lot of interesting data out there. Now, this is going to make me sound like a kook, but I mind
Feeling
sounding
the
that
presence
way.
is different than communication, though. Like sometimes I could say that, like I felt the presence.
And you'll never know what makes me sound like a kook. Go ahead.
Yeah, like I have felt the presence of my dad in a situation, but that doesn't mean that I felt his
Have you?
immaterial or physical
What do you
presence.
mean by that? What do you mean?
What
By
I
that?
mean is, in the same sense of there's an overwhelming sensation of my of reminiscence, I think, and I get my dad vibes
I got
type
you.
type thing. But
Yeah.
I don't think that's what I think people are thinking is something more tangible than that, like an actual, like a real presence,
Yeah.
like a there-ness.
It's not. You're describing a sense in the room, like something.
Yeah.
It almost feels like something serious.
Yeah, mine's more vibe than presence.
Yeah, vibe is a
Yeah.
good word for it. Now, hey, look here. Gregory Fisher, thank you so much, says, I agree with some of the stuff you say, Braxton, but my high school pal was a Southern Baptist PK, so I have some experience. Well, praise the Lord. Gregory,
Speaking
thank
of
you for that
Southern
super
Baptist
chat.
PKs, I mean, that's what you are. I mean, if you have your experience with those.
I'm sure that's why he said it.
Well, yeah, I know, but see, my experience with Southern Baptist PKs is one of them I know has been divorced 3 times and married 4th, and his 4th wife was his 2nd wife. So that's a Southern Baptist PK that I know, and he's a great man of God, believe it or not, even through all of that. So you never know what you get with PKs. Braxton, on the other hand, has not been married 4 times or divorced any time. So
Read this next comment, Pritchett.
okay, man, you're straining.
It's that pink one on the far right, too.
You're straining my.
It's on the screen in 3 places in 3 colors.
Yeah. Well, actually, put it in the center because these I have my 1.5s and I'm supposed to be wearing 2.0s at this point.
Here.
Yeah, that's the. Is this what? Okay. Menstruating person of color says, "Happy New Year from the 305 Miami. What would be a good and brief response for the notion that extraordinary events, miracles, require extraordinary evidence?"
So the solution. Oh, go ahead.
That's who knows what extraordinary, what constitutes as extraordinary. What I say is what Mike Lacona says, which is no, it's just something extraordinary. Out of the ordinary requires additional. Yeah. So we don't know what the nature of extraordinary is. Is it evidence that like he says glows, or does angel choir start singing in the background when you present this evidence? No. What you need is perhaps additional evidence.
They do if that evidence is the birth of the Son of God, but they start singing. But I would say no, it's not true that extraordinary claims require extraordinary evidence.
Probably requires additional evidence, and how much is that? That's subjected to the person, because the person who already evokes ecree is already giving you autobiography, not an argument.
Yeah, extraordinary claims require sufficient evidence.
Yeah.
If the question is if the question is, did this guy come back from the dead? Now, let's just think of an example today. Let's say we had a guy and we could demonstrate to our satisfaction that he was alive on December 31st of 2021, but that he died that night. And we actually have all the evidence you would ever need to establish that he died. Okay. And then we see that he's dead for the next few days. And on January 5th, we have absolutely good evidence that he's alive. Okay. Now that's just, in each of those cases, the evidence we have there is mundane evidence of a guy being alive, right? But when you put it together, the only possible explanation for that, or I guess I won't say the only possible, but the best explanation for that is that this guy was alive and he died and he's alive again. You notice here that the evidence isn't extraordinary in any sense, but the conclusion might strike someone as extraordinary. So I just think that extraordinary claims require sufficient evidence. All right.
Claims require evidence.
And thank you for that.
That's all. Claims require evidence. How much is dependent upon not the claim, but the person who's, skeptical of the claim. And that's autobiographical. That's not meaningful. You're just telling me about you.
Okay. All right. So we're almost done with this thing now. I think few. Let's see. We saw that one. 8 in 10 U.S. Christians believe in near-death experiences. 8 in 10.
That's not surprising. You and I are.
It's surprising to me, honestly, because I keep running into church people who are queasy about talking about it because it often comes in the same category as like psychic stuff or the law of attraction and things like that.
Okay, fair enough. I'm one of those people who believes in near-death experiences, and I'm one of those people who get queasy about the subject, depending on the tale that's being told. You know.
Yeah. Yeah.
I like your approach. I'm not queasy about because you use stuff that are like that have medical data and stuff backing it up. But like, if Jim Bob is on YouTube talking about his heaven tourism stuff, I'm just turning that off.
Yeah, and Gregory Fisher says this: hey, when I was working in Africa, there were people who died and came back to life by prayer. Yeah,
I don't have any reasons to doubt that.
Yeah, and there are a number of missionary type people who have gone over to developing world countries and come back and they say, yeah, I mean, it's shocking what you actually experience and see with your own eyes.
Yeah, and Craig Keener's going to say yay and amen to that.
Yeah.
And Craig Keener's the smartest human being on planet Earth right now, in my opinion.
Following Occam's razor, what is more extraordinary, an infinite loop of multiverses or God? Well, an infinite anything as opposed to God would definitely be culled away by Occam's razor. What you need is just the variable necessary to explain the data, and I think that God does.
Yeah.
But good,
that doesn't preclude the possibility of God. To me, doesn't actually not an infinite loop of multiverses, but a multiverse.
Mm-hmm.
I mean,
that threatens us not in any way.
Right? Could be.
And you need it to be seemingly infinite or actually infinite to get the numbers right that you would get a habitable universe like this by chance. Okay, now there were some things that got brought up here. Question: current position on the Euthyphro dilemma. My position on the Euthyphro dilemma has not changed. I still agree with William Lane Craig's middle way that
flows necessarily from
his nature. Yeah.
That's
so that's my answer. I know that people are starting to not like that for some reason. I haven't seen a problem with it yet. But there you go. Thanks, BDS. And Sam said, and I think he was saying this about the problem of evil in general. Asking a hard question isn't the same as proving a point.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Absolutely. That needs to be on a shirt.
Well, Cameron's already done that. Questions aren't arguments.
Yeah,
right?
But I like that even better than questions aren't.
Potentially unpopular opinion, New Year's resolutions, if they are promises, are anti-biblical. I derive this from Jesus saying that we should not make vows, but let our yes be yes and our no be no. Pritchett, that's got you all over it.
I have no problem with New Year's resolutions. I don't see them as vows, even though the root word of resolution is being resolute. That's not the same thing. Who keeps those things? I talk about this in a Trinity Radio video. I don't have a problem with New Year's resolution. You know what I hear when I hear New Year's resolution? I hear goals. These are what I want, and I think it is important to set goals. And I think New Year's resolutions, if you think of them as goals, like I'm resolute to accomplish this goal, I think goal setting is actually a very important human endeavor to undertake. So you should set goals. If you call it resolutions, that's fine. If you call it just goal setting, that's fine. I don't think of those things as vows. I think of them as goals. And people don't always achieve their goals, but people don't always hold their vows. So either way you go, I think that we can carry that idea of making vows, extending that to New Year's resolution. Your resolution, you can make, I vow to blah, 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 but don't do that. Just say, I want to X, Y, and Z, and I think resolutions are fine. So you don't have to make a goal. Don't have to make a vow. Just set a goal. And you'll never get there without Jesus, so make Jesus part of your goal.
I will come back to that. Hold on. I was trying to get Derek, though, here. Have you given thoughts on Craig versus White debate discussion on the problem of evil?
Yeah, it would have been great had they discussed the problem of evil.
They discussed the problem of evil.
I made the flippant claim in the Trinity radio forum that my initial thought was, had they discussed if truth makers did exist, would they smell like Smurf farts? Would have been a more interesting discussion than the one that they had. But I think that we are going to do something about that video at some point. So that's
well, we haven't really talked about it. Everybody's been talking about it, and I was excited. I feel the excitement because Pritchett doesn't. He doesn't get excited about this sort of thing, but I felt the excitement because
I thought it was the debate event of 2009.
Well, yeah, and I did
want
all
the way till 2021 to happen, but that would have been super awesome.
I did want to see it happen earlier, and I was waiting for it, and I was let down because honestly, I thought someone would be able to like actually pin down James White on this question. Not that he hasn't answered it before, but I wanted it to be answered directly on a stage like that. How it is that. Well, putting the Reformed theodicy or whatever James White's got with determinism up against what the challenge is, the objections of what that does to the nature of God.
Yeah,
I wanted to see that held down. We didn't get that. What we got was, and I think White said this on another program, maybe, that he really wanted to keep. He didn't know if he'd get another chance like this. He really wanted to try and nail down these things about Molinism. And okay, but I just thought that would have been an interesting debate, and I thought Craig answered everything in a very calm and gentlemanly way. There were a couple of thoughts that I had about things that I wouldn't have done like Craig, I guess, but he's William Lane Craig and I'm Braxton Hunter. So two different people, we do it differently, but we may do a show on that actually. Because
if you were
I had a lot of thoughts at the time.
If you were super excited about that, I don't know how you could not have seen that discussion as nothing but a letdown from this idea of what it should be versus what it was. Because I was like I said, that would have been cool 11 years ago. When I watched it like way after everyone did. I finally got to see it on my way when I was driving in Texas, and it was just after our event, and I was like,
well, there's just a lot of little things that like,
okay, they're two old guys.
There's a lot of things that I want to say about it, because there's a lot of things, like even now as I'm thinking about it, I had all these clear in my head when I first
I didn't
watched
think it was any better than a discussion that could have been had by anyone on that Modern Debates channel. By people infinitely less qualified. They could have had a much better conversation, and they didn't have it. So, both of them.
Yeah.
That's David.
Well, he kept saying afterwards about how
chewed that up better than
it control. Like you're saying, did Dr. Craig really say that God doesn't control everything that happens? We affirm libertarian free will. What Craig doesn't mean is that God couldn't, if he wanted to, stop whatever happens, or he could have made a deterministic universe, or he could have done any number of things.
No. Don't equivocate on the word control. Control, if you're thinking control means God doesn't determine, right. That's what libertarians, we don't believe that God determines, if that's what you mean by control. But that doesn't
What do you mean by control?
But what I mean, God's not in control, is God's not determining. But that doesn't mean that God's not in control of a situation. It's like R.C. Sproul in his maverick molecules that can destroy God's plans. You know, it's like if God doesn't control that molecule, no, God is sovereign and in control of his cosmos. It doesn't mean he controls my choices.
But that's
right.
irrelevant to the deeper point that I want to get to, which is he's making it sound like Craig thinks that God. He's making it sound as though Craig is saying God can't control. When it's not, it's God chooses to control in this way. And the way he chooses to control is to allow man to have libertarian free will. It just goes back to the thing about sovereignty. I still have people who've heard me talk about this. Remember when we used to have another Facebook group, and it was the traditionalists and Calvinists and all that. Yeah. And we were in there. Me and Pritchett made the group, I think. Yeah. And we were in there. We had all the rules, and it was great because you could cuss in there.
No, you could King James cuss.
That's what I was going to say. Oh, okay. And you had to do it in the Hebrew if it was in Hebrew, and the Greek if it was in Greek. So you could say skubalon. But anyway, the point is, I went around for over 1,000 posts. Is the last time I ever did anything like that. I was like, I'm done with this. Arguing with about 10 Calvinists, and everybody kept bringing other Calvinists into the group to argue with me about this point. Sovereignty. Look, yes, I believe that God is sovereign. Calvinists believe that God is sovereign. I think we both think God is maximally sovereign.
Open theists think God is sovereign.
Yeah. So the thing is, what I want to say about this is the difference is sovereignty means something. And many of you have heard me say this many times. I'm sorry, but to be a sovereign is to be a king. That's what it is. A king is a sovereign over his realm. He's in control of what happens within his realm. But that never has meant in any case before
determinism.
That he controls the movement of every molecule in his realm. It just means he can do as he pleases. He can step in at any time. He can dole out rewards and punishments. These are all things that the Bible says God is and God does. Pritchett has often said things don't super mean things when you're talking about God, and I agree with that. What we're saying here is, what's the difference between a particular king on earth, his sovereignty, and God's sovereignty? The difference is the totality of the realm. God is the sovereign over the whole cosmos. And as a result, with the whole cosmos, he can step in at any time. He can dole out rewards and punishments. He can do as he pleases. But it doesn't have to mean something it's never, ever, ever meant. Because words mean things. It doesn't mean that he has to, if he's sovereign, display his sovereignty through determinism. It never has meant that. It doesn't mean that. Now, you can say that's the way I think he functions in his position as a sovereign. And I can say, I think in his position as a sovereign, what he does is he allows men to make free choices. But in both cases, we believe in the sovereignty thing. And now when it comes to this thing, I forget what I was using that to talk about here.
The word control. Like God's not in control of your...
Yeah, he is in control
of the yes.
Just like he's a sovereign, and that's why he's in control.
Right.
The difference is, how does he control? Does he control by micromanaging everything in like determinism? Or does he control by allowing people to have freedom, but then he steps in at when he wants to, like the Bible says he does, and doles out, and all that stuff the Bible says he does that I keep listing off, because that's what the Bible says that he does.
Right. Yeah. If by control you mean determinism, no person who believes in libertarian freedom believes in determinism. If by control you mean God just has no control over these people, no, nobody believes that either. Oh, but theists don't even believe that.
Right. And so William Lane Craig does not mean when he says God's got to deal with the cards he's been dealt, which White has talked about for a long time about this. He has not said about what Craig actually means by that is simply that if God's going to go this way and give man libertarian free will and look at the feasible worlds, he's got to deal with what man chooses to freely do.
And all the possible worlds that God could have created is what God did. Okay, I'm going to create a world with free... I'm going to see what many worlds with free creatures look like. I wonder what kind of cards they're going to give me. Before he's ever created anything, he's like,
and by the way,
what kind of cards I get.
Calvinists who are
Maybe
listening...
God just wants to see what kind of cards he gets before he creates anything. What's wrong with him wanting to do that?
And Calvinists who are listening to this, we're talking about logical ordering, not temporal ordering. We don't think God learns things.
Blah, blah, blah.
So
God's like,
I just know what people
I'm going
to
to think of a whole bunch of possible worlds. Some of them can be determined worlds, right? That's no big deal. You can have Molinism and middle knowledge with determinism. What are some possible deterministic worlds? What are some possible free? Oh, and I'm going to get dealt some cards and some of these. I wonder what cards
in other words,
God, and then to say, God can't, but how can God know unless he determines? Well, how can God exist by the necessity of his nature? Explain that. I have no idea how that works. I just know that it does. And how does God know everything that he knows?
Just like I don't know how my car works, but I know that it does.
Right. I don't know how God knows. I just know that he does. That's good enough for me. Good enough for William Lane Craig. It's good enough for Pritchett and Braxton.
And I just that's just one thing. There were a number of things, but you know, when someone says like that, when someone is, and I'm not saying this about White in general, but when people try to out-pious you and say, well, that doesn't sound pious enough, they won't say it like that. But, you know.
That's the sanctimonious blather, pseudo-pious. Yeah, that's exactly what
in this case, if someone does that to you, you say, well, wait a minute. We Molinists think that God is so great and so omniscient that he can know what people do even without determining it.
Yeah.
Isn't that amazing that we believe in a God like that?
Yeah, well, how come your God? How come
the Calvinist believes that God has to determine it? Your God is
awesome as my God. Yeah, now we're awesome being competitions here. Maximal awesomeness. Why isn't your God as maximally awesome as mine? Huh? I guess you just don't love Jesus enough to have a Molinist God. Just start doing that kind of stuff. Just
I'm going to call you.
Answer a fool according to his folly. But my overall impression of that is I was kind of bored with it.
All right,
and not just. William Lane Craig and James White should have put on a better show than they put on. Period.
I'm going to call this person NPC.
Okay.
Says my New Year's resolution: eat sweet 6 days a week instead of 7 days a week.
That's your resolution.
And thank you for that super chat so much.
NPC. You know, that reminds me of the Kai MPC 2000 XL that I used to have and made some bangers on it. Is a MIDI production center that sampled. Anyway, that's what I think of when I think of MPC.
I rarely get a super chat for someone in the chat to tell someone else in the chat something. But I appreciate it. Thank you, C. Denise. Really appreciate that. You should have seen, I think it was C. Denise. If it's not, I'm sorry, but I think it was you who posted a picture of a possum in your yard. And it was a New Zealand possum, I think, or something. It was not like a possum you've seen around here. That
really?
thing was
Where did you see this?
Adorable. It makes me think that
where was this at?
all of nature is better in New Zealand.
Where was this posted?
On her Facebook page. I think that's what it was.
I want to see something I've never seen.
He or she. I think it's a she. Let's see.
Come on, Jonathan. Let Braxton get his point in.
Because I told them they'll never find out what it was that was going to make me sound like a kook now. And they didn't hear it. Yeah, she said, I like that. Words don't super mean things. That came about originally with foreknowledge in
and predestination.
In Romans 8:28 and following.
Right.
Yeah, but you brought it because someone says, yeah, but it's talking about God's foreknowledge here, so it must mean
super
X,
duper
Y, and Z.
meanings.
It's
Yeah,
like, no, it doesn't super mean things.
It doesn't super mean things.
Even if that understanding of what foreknowledge means there is correct, and it's not that he's referring to Old Testament saints. And
right.
Stuff.
It just means new.
Okay, well. Yeah.
Blah, 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 Pritchard. Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Braxton?
I feel like Braxton and Jonathan didn't have really strong opinions about that debate.
That's just kind of.
Oh, she says it was not her, so I'm sorry about that. Someone showed a picture of a possum, one of our followers.
Tim the Ancient.
I don't like followers, subscribers. Tim the Ancient.
Sound like cult leader.
Yeah, it doesn't sound right. They're not my followers. They're Jesus's followers.
That's right.
But not all of my followers are Jesus's followers, which I hate that. We want them to be. The most skilled sovereign is one that can intervene the least. That's an interesting way of thinking about it. All right. Here we got Robert. I love you, Robert. Thank you so much.
Professor Geiler.
I wonder if he still has. We one time sent him a prop that used to be behind us.
Yeah, he got it. It was smashed.
I know. I wonder if he still has it.
Yeah. Do you still have Neil?
Thank you for that substantial
Thank
super
you,
chat, Robert. That is unbelievable.
Yeah, we appreciate
that.
Wow.
Wow. Thank you so much. Are they talking about William Lane Craig and Dr. White?
No, of course not. Yeah,
well, we were.
We were talking about their unbelievable thing that Braxton was super excited about and that I thought was a complete letdown.
I'll tell you, I'm also excited about this Rethinking Hell conference that's happening today and yesterday that you can still get access to.
Yeah.
And I think you should go over and check that out. But also, nobody's asked me to say this. So somebody tell.
He does still have it. Sweet.
Awesome.
Well, I wonder if he glued it back together.
I don't know. Somebody tell James that I said this. But I'm kind of excited about the Modern Day Debates little conference they're about to have in Dallas because there's some good debates coming up. We get David Wood debating a couple of people, and you got Inspiring Philosophy debating, so it's going to be fun. All right. Well, I'll tell you what. I'm going to go ahead and say we should probably let this thing die.
Yeah, we've got to go to our
after show.
The after show. We're going to talk about New Year's resolutions in our after show.
After this, if you'll go to patreon.com/TrinityRadio and become a patron at
Goals,
any amount,
not vows.
You'll be a part of our after show. We're going to talk about, I don't even know what, Pritchett, what do you think?
New Year's resolutions. My New Year's resolutions,
right.
your goals, not vows.
Well, then that's what we'll do.
And so go to Trinity or patreon.com/TrinityRadio. Sign up.
Yep.
And if you're looking for a theological education, you can always go to www.TrinitySem.edu and take courses from professors you've actually heard of, like Dr. Braxton Hunter, Dr. Leighton Flowers, Dr. Chris Date. Dr. Robert Geiler's got a math class coming up, which some people could probably stand to avail themselves of.
Yeah.
Yeah. Dr. Chatham, Dr. Washington, all kinds of people.
I'm going to answer this last question.
Okay.
Because it's about my favorite
TrinitySem.edu. Portable education you can do at home.
Because it's about my favorite passage in the Bible. Could you explain the passage of Elisha and the children making fun of him for baldness? Because I'm sure you know the story that 2 she-bears came out and tore the kids into pieces. I often see this as an objection for saying God is good. Well, there's a couple of things to consider. First of all, it probably wasn't, or it doesn't, it's not necessarily that these were children in the sense that you and I would use the word children. And secondly, this is actually more serious than it would have been in any other circumstance because it affected the message as it was going forward. This is an example perhaps of stepping in. But see, here's what happened. Elisha was the successor of Elijah. They were saying, go up, bald head, go up, because they were wondering if Elisha was going to go up, perhaps. Maybe that's what the explanation for this. Like Elijah went up, and maybe they're making fun of the story and therefore mocking God and mocking Elijah and now mocking Elisha. And so some kind of judgment needed to be brought that God's man would be upheld and he could go on preaching the message that needed to be preached. Bridget?
You just like it that God got after people.
God killed people for not, or she bears killed people for making fun of bald guys.
Yeah.
Don't mess with bald guys.
Right. That's
Do-
the
look,
that's,
here's
that's
the
the
thing.
point that
Do
God
you
wanted
love-
to get.
do-
That's what we were waiting for.
Do you love Jesus? Then don't say a negative word about bald people.
That's why I don't. Braxton Hunter, Tim Stratton, Dr. Tim Stratton, another professor at Trinity you can learn from if you sign up for courses at TrinitySem.edu. Professors you've heard of for a price you can afford to do it right here. And with that, take us out, Braxton.
I'm trying to. Nope.
Get your face up in the camera like you used to. We're back, so you got to do this.
I don't know if this is going to block everything out or not. But with that, we'll see you next time on Trinity Radio. It didn't work. Forget it.